how do you keep it as viewer agnostic as possible? How do you land that sweet neutral that you start the build up and then you can tune it into what your players are in tune with, right?
Hmm. I
So,
think
mhm.
I think in a way it just goes with learning to go with the flow of stuff, or like having cuz I've had that in, like, I guess, like, the current game that I've been running. I've had some stuff that has fallen through, but thankfully the players don't know that this was a fuck up for me. On the player side of things, they don't realize that, oh man, this planning that I had is kind of out the window. But because of that, that becomes like my advantage, where it becomes, okay, wait a minute, wait a minute. This is what I have established. This is what they've seen. This kind of works as foreshadowing for stuff that I could twist this other thing that I was going to throw out into something else, and I can like build on this. It's kind of like trying to learn to work with like the little tools that you've laid out, and learning to like not give into like that despair in the moment of like, oh man, this did not play out how I wanted it, and more play into like, let the players have their fun. Let them have that fucking moment of like, yes, fuck yeah, we did this thing, and work with what has been put on there, and just kind of like, they don't know the stuff that's behind the scenes. So it's just like, maybe this isn't a complete fuck up for me as far as they know.
Right. Because in the end, your job as a writer or a DM is to keep the wheels spinning. You don't keep the wheels spinning by worrying about how it's wobbling and yanking the wheel off. You just do your best to keep it rolling. You put the best spin you can on it, and you keep going.
Hmm.
But there's also that element of, and I say this an astounding amount for someone who does not endorse legal activities in any way. If you commit a crime, don't tell nobody. Stop talking.
Exactly.
Just
Don't.
don't tell nobody. The more people you tell, the more of a problem it is. Whether you succeed at the crime or you fail, don't tell nobody.
The more that I've run games, the more that I've learned to shut the fuck up. Every day I wake up and I shut the fuck up. That is the most important thing to learn. It's just like fucking, it's just, okay, everything went to doo-doo shit, but they don't know that. It's like this thing of fucking maybe a big dude that was supposed to be like a big deal or something that you established early on fell flat, and they didn't have the impact that you wanted him to have, and it turns into this thing of like, you're just like, okay, that was not like a big deal to the party or whatever, and they were probably fine. But what if I reworked that concept and just throw them in later on because they never saw what he was supposed to be able to do? I'm just gonna plop you right over here, like fucking, I don't know, like 10 sessions later or some shit like that. And give them that time to really shine.
Yeah, and another thing is, especially as a DM, like whether they succeed or fall flat, how you respond to it um, definitely helps set the tone for how the players will see it. Um, and some examples I've seen is like, I've seen enemies who the party just chumped because I didn't accurately take into account how bullshit some of the players had gotten during level ups and stuff, and so they just trounced what should have been like a harrowing boss encounter like it was nothing. And like I actually built into the storyline that like people were super impressed that they just raffle stomped this guy, and everywhere they were going, NPCs were like, "Are you kidding me? You beat that guy? That's insane!"
Yeah.
And kept talking the party up, which helps make them feel good about what they did. Um,
Yes.
and on the other side of the coin, I've had enemies that were overtuned for the players and sort of pulled back the enemy to where it's like that thing you see a lot in JRPGs where the enemy kind of stomps the party early on, and then it's like, oh, haha, you're not worth finishing off, and he just leaves. Um, I've had bad guys do that before, and to sort of not make the party feel bad, you go behind and you act accordingly to like, oh, this important NPC comes in and it's like you survived an encounter with them. Like no one's ever done that. That's
Yeah.
crazy. So how you react to the encounters, no matter whether they are overtuned or undertuned or NPC falls flat, definitely your reaction will help steer the party.
And
Mhm.
something else that kind of came up while you were explaining that, Severs, is I'd have to ask whether it was purely another NPC reacting to what happened in those mistimed beats, or was it something that happened out of character as well with you and your players?
Um, I have had both happen. I've had um an example being I've had times where I've done little commentaries like peeking behind the curtain where maybe someone comes up with some idea that runs off a really powerful enemy, and I go, you guys weren't supposed to be able to run him off, but you came up with such a good idea that I had to roll with it. Or I'll be like, yeah, this guy was a big deal, and y'all just stumped the shit out of him. I hope you feel good. Um, so sometimes I have broken the Mario rule of if it goes to shit, don't tell anybody. Sometimes if it goes to
I,
shit, you let them know in a way that makes them feel good.
I have also done that before. Um, I the best way, when you're experienced at something, you know when to break the rules. So it's that thing of I definitely have had like a big enemy that has been kind of played up that gets dunked on really hard by the party. And I try to play that up. Like I don't it looks bad when you're the DM and you're like, "Oh man, wow, I did not expect that to happen." And instead, it's good to be like, "Holy shit. Um I didn't expect that to happen. You absolutely destroy this fucking dude." Like it's like playing up like you're bullying the fuck out of this guy. This guy's a big deal. The NPCs around them, like his posse, they're scared. They're like it's shit like that. It's knowing how to play it.
Yeah, especially and especially if you can do it as a means of emotionally rewarding people, particularly for out of the box thinking or doing things that they weren't supposed to be able to do. Um, Beating down a enemy really badly that they should have struggled with is an example. But like, if you have the prototypical bard that seduces everything, and they actually like seduce the right person to where you have to like change an entire story beat of like, oh, you just seduced the treasure of the kingdom, and they're gonna help you like fund this operation. Like being able to sort of pull back the curtain and say like, hey, you guys have done probably what you shouldn't have been able to, but it was so good. It is definitely a way to help kind of bolster the feelings of the party.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. It makes sense. You definitely want your party to feel good. More. You want your party to feel things. You want them to feel accomplished when they've done something. You want them to feel like if they're being beaten, that they are the heroes, and them being beaten is significant. That the actions they take, the results they achieve, are something that matter in the world. You want your heroes to feel like that.
Yes.
I think another good point that I kind of want to roll a little bit backwards towards is build up. Build up is super important for how your characters perceive an NPC, whether for good or for bad. It's a function of time, as per other things, but there's also a question of how do you do good build up? How do you talk up an NPC? How do you talk up a monster? How do you talk up an event without going too far or underplaying it? Because there's certain cases, obviously, where you want to take it real subtle and you want it to be something that if your players pick up on it, they feel good about picking up, and they're picking out their clues, they're listening for the right rumors. But sometimes you have to make it out there, right? Sometimes you have to go as big as possible. What is the best build up you've seen for a character that you didn't know about yet? Well, let's start with Mario on this one.
I would say probably the best build up has been I guess in a way, because it hasn't reached its conclusion in a sense, but I feel like it's worked really well, where a DM friend of mine, as mentioned before with the Minotaur NPC, this same game, the big bad that we have been like constantly going against, he had this really good, like, it was just we technically interacted with him from the get-go, because the idea was that he was some demon lord. All of our characters died at the start of the campaign, and we were all in hell, and he basically put us in like a Hades like gauntlet, where he put us in like this like mega dungeon, and our goal was to see how far we could get, and I guess the idea would be all the way at the end you have to fight him. And we never got there. We ended up like through our usual like role play bullshit, we ended up finding some other way to get out of hell, and we made like some deal with another demon lord that was my character with Baphomet, and we ended up getting sucked back topside. But he was there, like the demon lord was called Grazitz, and Grazitz was there from the beginning, and we had like conversations or like certain contact with the dude, but we didn't really fight the guy until the point where we like broke out of hell, where the dude took one swing at my character and like vaporized him. And that was basically like the opening, where the dude like ended up like vaporizing me, and it released something and we were able to get like sucked out. But or vaporized my character, not me. DM fucking destroyed me at the table.
Why not both?
But,
If it feels like that, I think I think they made you into your character. I think that's good. I think that's
yeah,
good.
right. But like it's fucking, yeah, honestly, yes. But it's like this guy has shown like big feats of power in different ways, of like, not only is he physically powerful, but the guy has like a bunch of connections everywhere. It is like this constant buildup of even when a player ended up dying and they brought like a new player in, it's less of like Grazitz is to blame for like issues that they have, but it's more like it's like one of the players was a sailor and they had issues with these fucking like sailors that would go on raids, and it turns out that these sailors are like fucking Grazitz worshippers. They're like his cultists, and it's this issue of like how many fucking pies he has his finger in, where this dude just has this immense connection of power. And on top of that, he still had a connection to all of us. And he would constantly appear as like some apparition in like our most dire of times. And he would like joke on us, and he'd mess with us. And it's this thing where we would joke on him. We'd fucking get him to shut up. And we'd have moments where we'd fucking get him with like, ha, well, fuck you, we fucked up this thing. And it's like this thing where you can tell we pissed him off, and it turns into this thing where he's like, I'm gonna get you back. I'm gonna get your ass back for that. You're gonna look so fucking stupid. And sure enough, sessions later is like this strong buildup because his words started to have weight, and it would become this thing where it's like, man, I really shouldn't, like, it felt really good to joke on him. I really shouldn't have fucking done that, because it turns into this thing later on. NPC that we cared about has been like corrupted by Grazitz, and they like end up turning into like this Slaneshi fucking like, well, it wasn't really like a dude we cared about. It was more like some fucking guard that was connected to NPCs that we knew. And it was like this thing where he ends up turning into like this Slaneshi style, like fucking demon thing. And it was this thing where this guy also on top of that became like a big bad, and like still a threat that we have not been able to take care of yet. But in the end, he is just a small show of the power of the big bad that is Grazitz. And it's like we just constantly deal with his fodder while he is this constant looming presence in the background that is just fucking with us. And I feel like that was done really well. Like this build up where we still haven't even gotten to him yet, and it's just this constant thing of he is this guy on the fucking horizon. And yeah, that felt like some of the best build up, I guess, to him that I've seen so far in a game.
That is some good build-up, and I picked up some interesting things from the entire recanting. One of them is something I harp on about a lot. You'll hear me talk about this all the time. How I thought Handsome Jack from Borderlands 2 was
Oh
a
yeah.
phenomenal villain because he had constant presence. He wasn't always there. He wasn't the only NPC you talked to. But every time something went right, every time something went wrong, every time there was blank space, he would be there, and he would be trying to subvert you. He would be laughing at you. He was constantly a presence. And for better or worse with an NPC, as long as they have a constant presence, they will always be building up their character for your players, for your readers. They will constantly be, you'll know more about them just by virtue of them being there, even if you can't interact with them. But in your case, he was interactable. You were able to, like you said, you were able to clown on him, you were able to get back at him. And I think it's also important that Grazitz showed reactions, that he wasn't just constantly on the high horse, but you were able to reach him, so you were able to reach him. There were things that you said. It created, rather than a stance of evil acting on you, a mutual hate between the heroes and the villain. And that itself is immense, because there's a difference between the villain being a bad guy and the villain being your bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was as equally important in what I heard.
Yeah.
What about you, Severs? What is what's your take on this one? What's your story?
as far as build-up goes, I've been trying to think of like what sort of lessons to take from the best build-up NPC I can think of. Um, and the lessons are sort of one, you want a character that grows as the party grows. Um, you want to show depth. You don't want to have just one note character. They need to evolve over time as the characters evolve. You so in that aspect, you're going to want to probably have some moments that break down and subvert expectations. Um, a good example is the like really cool silent masked assassin character I had talked about before. She became a sort of go along with the party NPC, and over time there were just moments where instead of being sort of that um too cool for school and silent edge lord sort of thing, she showed other sides of herself. Like she started noticing whenever the wizard in the party was getting targeted by enemies and would constantly go specifically to protect them, and eventually became because they had sort of the orphan story, eventually became like an adoptive mother to in roleplay to them, to where they were like going and checking up on them outside of combat, and um, going to them and giving them little gifts and stuff like that. Um, we had one point where we had sort of out of character joked about the thief in our party should try getting her to go on a date with him, and he did. He sort of like played up hitting on her, and to our surprise, like she had a moment where she took the mask off and like leaned in and kissed him, and that established a deeper tie with the party because now we got a romance subplot going, and B was acting sort of out of character for what we had seen thus far, and so when you get these little like special moments that you don't think you should see, it sort of A makes you pay attention more to them, and B is like, whoa, that's really special, and it makes the NPC stand out as more special when you have those sort of character growth moments that you can see. Um, a, a, a good one that I've seen play a few times in other media is when you have like a war type scenario and you have this like guard captain who is super stoic and serious and all that, and then he sees a loved one or a good friend get hurt or in danger and just goes berserk. That's something that like really stands out, and you're like, holy shit, there's more to this guy than just a stone face, and it's really important what's going on here, and I need to pay attention to this. So sometimes building one way that's predictable, and then subverting that expectation can be a really strong tool to sort of punctuate character growth.
I see, and it does kind of play off of the other fundamentals here too, because it's impossible to subvert expectations for a character that you haven't met, that you haven't spent enough time with, because if you were to say have that kiss moment with an NPC that you'd met a session or two ago, that doesn't become a subversive moment for them, that it just becomes part of their character. Depth isn't a bad thing, but how that depth of character is presented and explored how it's presented in timing to your players and your viewers and your readers is a very powerful force.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways you can mess around with NPCs. A lot of it does come down to presentation as much as design.
Get the Mega Mind image in my head.
Oh no, here we go again.
Presentation.
Presentation matters a lot. The first impression matters, the last impression matters. Having a lot of impressions matters as much as having a few impressions. I think we'll round this out with one more good question I have for each of you on an NPC that you have seen or met before that still sticks around in your noggin to this day. What is an NPC that in a story you've participated in, you feel like you haven't met enough for how strong of an impression they left on you? Whether it was just they had that one moment and you have yet to see them again, but you're excited for it, or they had that one moment and you hope you never see them again, or that you never see them do that again. What's that one that just hasn't cropped up enough? Severs.
I'd say probably one that comes to mind is one that sort of had the problem of an NPC that was never meant to be attached to, and people got attached to them anyway. And it's sort of in the classic example from way back. I remember there's a story online. I went looking for it, can't find it in it, but it's the story of No, which was this little girl who was this guardian over this set of magic chainmail and sword, and basically she was not meant to be an NPC. She's just meant to be a standby that stands there and says, "Don't touch this stuff." And as the party went to explore more, like she's very limited in all she'll say is, "Don't touch this," or she'd say no. And so they'd ask her name. What's your name? No. And so they called her No. And it's like, "Do you mind if we take you with us?" No. And so they took her with them. And it's sort of that thing. The players latching on to a character that was never meant to be. In my case, it was latching on to. We ran across this just little one-shot NPC. He was meant to be like the sort of incompetent guy that gets in trouble and the party needs to save him. The guy who kind of makes the heroic party sideline off in the wilderness because he's getting jumped, in this case, by like blank dogs or something like that. He was this little halfling paladin, and he fought his little ass off, but was getting absolutely beat to shit. And we came in and saved him. And he was very gracious and very like proper gentleman paladin, and it even like took one of our characters who was like the most lowborn character of us all, and was like treating her like she was royalty. It's like, "Oh, Lady Svala, I am enamored with your ways in combat. You inspire me." And just this guy, he's this lovable little shit, and he's got some story about wanting to prove himself, to become a real knight. And so every couple of sessions, we would ask, like, hey, um, let's find out what's going on with that little halfling guy. Let's find out if he ever actually became a knight. Let's find out, you know, is there a way we can help him on our way? And he was never intended to be a recurring NPC, but the party just latched on so hard that eventually, um, even when the DM sort of relented and was like, okay, he's come back for this thing, like the players kept wanting more. So yeah, that's an NPC that sort of you never got to see the full extent of what you wanted to from them. Is those ones that you basically the DM doesn't have a story for them and has to come up with one because the players latch onto it.
It's fair. It's a fair thing to think about, because when you make one strong impression, regardless of what the impression will be, because you've made a strong impression, the players want to see more of it. It makes them feel something, right?
Mm-hmm. And in a way,
Oh,
it's kind of like the players start to get the feeling that it is their input that, because like you start to get that sense of, we could have just ignored this guy, but constantly checking in on him causes the DM to have to, like, oh, let's do some stuff with him. So in a way, it's like that shared kind of story stuff. You guys made him important.
Yeah.
And that feels pretty cool.
That's the way a lot of people envision tabletop RPGs are supposed to be. It is supposed to be a shared story. It can't. It functionally cannot be like that all of the time. But
No.
though it is the same way that a single really strong impression works, that is the most striking impression people tend to get of tabletop RPGs, and that's why it sticks with them. Those moments are so incredibly powerful because the player has something that they want, and the DM is able to give them access to it, to get them to a place that they want to be. To tell a story together requires the player to have the desire to tell or receive part of a story, and the DM to tell or receive that part of the story. It's not something that happens all the time, because players don't naturally want what is present all of the time. Nobody wants to really truly live the life of a level 1 hunting geese for the rest of their D&D career. I cannot see a game like that existing. It might somewhere, but 90% of the time, I want to say, players are looking for an adventure, something beyond what they can do. And that is the core of a lot of tabletop RPG storytelling. It's an adventure of some kind. Now, what that adventure can be and what adventure means to those people can differ a lot, and it can create incompatibilities in storytelling. But when everybody is on the same page, whether they get there at the same time or not, when everybody lands on the same page of the story at the same time, it creates those moments, those big D&D moments. But Mario, what is an NPC that has left that kind of strong singular impression on you?
So in the sense that, because the question was originally left an impression and possibly didn't get to, like,
Expand on it?
you kind of wish. Yeah, I know one in a game where I really wish more was done with it, and they were kind of done away with early on, was an NPC where to put To put things in a way, I was playing a very religious character,
Mhm.
and when we were going through a city, we were leaving a city. Our characters had money on them due to like previous stuff that we did, like a fair amount of money. Um, my character, in their eyes, chose to save someone, as they chose to purchase a person in the idea of giving them freedom. Um, and but also in their sense, he was in a kind of like a fucked up way. It's like, oh, I'm going to save them by placing my religion on them. But
Mm.
it was this thing of they wanted to treat this NPC right, and they wanted to like do it in the sense of they wanted them to see why they should believe in my character's deity. It wasn't like enough to just have them like suddenly start praying to this thing. He wanted them to believe. And it was this thing of like, I am going to show you why my deity is great. So it turned into this thing of some poor feeble woman was basically brought with them, and he was like, now you're gonna stand right next to me as we fight dangerous things. Don't worry, you'll be safe because you're near me. And I'm going to show you why my god is so great, because I'm going to live because my god loves me so goddamn much. And in the end, there was a nice little like friendly relationship that was built between the characters. They were able to like talk normally amongst each other, and it wasn't like a they were less afraid of like the position that they were in, and they were being kind of taught how to fight by my character. And at some point that NPC was killed. My character went through a lot of bullshit to bring them back. But then from there they kind of got shelved by like they didn't have a lot of time to really do more stuff, and other stuff was put more into focus. And I was kind of sad about that, because I was feeling like that was going in a cool direction where I wanted to see what would become of that, and it just turned more into like, oh yeah, they're here too. And yeah, nothing else came out of that. And it was mostly just because they were dead for a while, and they ended up coming back, and then it's just like, yeah, now they're here. So it was just, I was a little saddened by that, and the campaign ended with them just being like some side companion with my character, and that was that.
Mm.
But I felt it could have gone in a cool direction. It could have there could have been more going into that.
Um,
Uh,
I think that's hard. I think that's hard from a GM's perspective, because that's a
yeah,
case of perhaps the GM just wasn't looking at a particular player's moment. They weren't reading as far into an impression that a single player got. Because it's easy to see when the entire party wants something. It's rare that the entire party is going to be non-vocal if all of them want one particular thing. It's in
I
fact
think
usually a chain reaction.
I think something that became like an issue in that game was just the fact that the NPC was too helpful for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it became a thing where my character was really strong as is, and they now had like somebody that was literally synchronizing with my character, and we'd bully the fuck out of things in combat.
Mm.
And I think what happened was when they got killed, I feel like that was something more so done as a way to balance things. And it turned into this thing where a lot of us tried, like the party as a whole, tried to do some stuff to get them back. and the DM was just like, no, you can't really do any, like, certain things he wasn't allowing to work. And it was, I I ended up like dropping it because it became this thing where I started to think like, I think I might have been asking for too much by having this character always here with us, because I feel like this probably has just been like a balance issue for the DM. And while we did end up eventually getting like the character back later on, and they weren't necessarily as helpful, and they were a lot more squishy since we were like higher level. Um it became this thing where that just started to get thrown to the wayside, and it was like there wasn't a lot of room for good one-on-one interaction between my character and that NPC. So like a lot of stuff didn't like grow from there. But yeah, it's a little bit of just like, I get why it happened. I kind of wish there was room for that to grow, but also like understanding from the DM's perspective, I can see why things ended up the way that they were.
Yeah, there's definitely situations like that where while it's really nice narratively, some things just don't work out in practice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing I think that can be a takeaway from both these examples is, um, especially, I'd say, hey, players out there, if you have an NPC that um, you really want to see more of, or really want to involve your story in, um, take the time to sit down and talk with your DM about it, because one, you you may have a DM that doesn't know, like, hey, I want this character around, because maybe it's just you and not the whole party, and they have to focus on the whole party at once, and so you definitely need to clue them in, and second is if there's something like a balance thing, you can talk to them and be like, is there a way we can make this work? Is there a way we can change around some things with this NPC so it's not imbalancing things? But ultimately, unless you're talking and on the same page, um, a lot of times the DM's just not gonna know, and they're gonna have to go. They're gonna have to go by what's going on in their mind and their campaign. And if you really want, a satisfying resolution, be willing to and it may not work, but at least try talking to them off to the side. I know that happened with me in one game where I had a romantic interest character, and I went to the DM. I was like, "Hey, we're introducing this character. I want them to be important to my character's plot, but I also don't want anything bad to happen to them. I don't want them to be a cudgel to beat me over the head with."
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
and so that was something I established early on, and the DM went along with it, and it was very satisfying how things played out with that character. Versus some other characters that I didn't say anything about, but I should have probably been like, hey, I'd like a little more spotlight on this guy, or I'd like to see what happens with this guy, or can we help this NPC? Can we integrate them into the story? And they never got there. So definitely, be willing as a player to talk to your DM and let them know how you're feeling about the characters, and especially if there's one you want to be part of the story. Let them know that that character has sort of landed in a good way, and that you want them involved.
Mhm.
If you consider D&D to be a shared storytelling experience, not talking to your DM is like trying to make a movie where you have all of the writers writing separate stories in separate rooms. When you get the script at the end, it's going to be a mess and nobody's going to be happy with it.
Mhm. That is
So
probably one of the hardest hurdles for most people, which is very funny, is the fact of like, remember to talk to each other.
mhm.
You are all in the same room together once a week, maybe. You can speak to these people when you are not in this room. I promise it's okay.
Hmm.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a matter of perception is a limited resource. And your DM has to spend a lot of perception on a lot of things
Oh
typically.
yeah.
So do the best you can to help out. If you see something interesting, talk with the party about it. It doesn't even have to be talk to the DM, but talk to your party about it while the DM's around. Help the DM to take notice of what you're interested in. Help the story you want to see be written.
Mhm.
But I think we have tailed on about our interesting, I won't say favorite, interesting NPC experiences for quite a bit today. I do have a bit more I'd want to talk about, but that just means as the best content creator in the universe, I get to save that for another time. But
Mhm.
gentlemen, do you have anything you want to let the people know that's going on with you? Anything you want to talk about, your own projects, how things are going with you? Your ats, how they can find you, all that good jazz.
Oh.
Plug your link tree, Mario.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Fucking I'm Mario Sack on most things, except for probably Twitter, where I'm Mario_Sack. Um, I do art, animations, and streams
At the same time,
at the same time. All of those.
he's got
And
6 arms.
as
I
cons are
have
open.
6 arms, and it's kind of epic. I am actually Machamp in real life.
Champ has 4 arms.
Yeah, I'm just like mega evolved Machamp.
You can find him on Twitter. All the links will be in the description, so don't worry about that. What are you working on right now? What's your project right now? What's your big thing?
I am working on an animation right now, like personal stuff wise, like stuff that I'm always working on or commissions. Um, Personal stuff, I want to animate more stuff for like my YouTube channel, just because I want to throw more content on there. Something that I want to get done is like I started up a while back on a little snippet from one of my games because I thought it was pretty neat, and I was just like, this would look cool if I animated it. So that is my current project, and I actually got a little bit of progress of that done today, and I'm inching forward on it anytime I can. But yeah, every now and then I also just make shit posts to fill like the time, such as the breakdancing goblin that I did recently.
Every now and then. Mario
Mhm.
Sack 2022. What about you,
Exactly.
Severs?
Um, right now, not a whole lot. I don't have any professional projects. Recreationally, I'm actually learning, trying to learn inside and out PTU, which is Pokemon Tabletop United, um, with the hopes of eventually gathering some people and DMing a Pokemon game. So you may see that in the works for me fairly soon, depending upon how my brain is around wrapping around a Pokemon RPG.
As someone that's played PTU in before, I first went, man, maybe I should see if I could play in that. And my second thought was having flashbacks to that one time I played PTU and I caught a Scyther It just happenstance, lucked out, found the Scyther, caught it, and then turned into that one player that the DM could not allow to do things because I would end encounters. Good times.
Excellent.
Good times. And as for me, I am just here. I'm just existing. I'm vibing, as the kids these days would say. The YouTube channel's been a little on the low side lately between this coming out late and me not producing a lot of video content. I'm working on my videos, but I'm trying to do interesting things with my editing, and I already struggle with sitting down to edit, but I'm trying to make my videos. I'm trying to push myself to the next level on video editing. And it's hard, it's going slow, but I'd rather go slow and do it right and be good at it for the next time I get it done than to not do it at all. So there'll be more content here, but there is always content over on my Twitch, twitch.tv/Zartimus. You can always find me on Twitter at @ZartIsLost, where I will retweet Mario's shit posts as dedicatedly as always. And the Discord, of course, where I hang out with everyone and mostly talk about gacha games because I have a crippling addiction. That's mostly it. You can also find me on Patreon if you'd like to support the show. Any amount helps, because frankly, Overlord Bezos doesn't pay me enough. I'm just phenomenal all the time. But I think that'll wrap things up. Any final words, gentlemen?
Just don't fuck up your sessions.
The realest advice you could possibly give. Just don't fuck it up.
Bro, just
Thanks.
don't fuck up.
Thanks, no pressure, Mario.
Yeah, no pressure. Just don't fuck up, dude.
Follow up on my my previous segment. The speed with which this episode has been demonetized is astounding. Please go to my Patreon. Thank you.
I mean, if we need, I'm sure I can read off some slurs to help along.
I don't think I've ever heard you speak a slur in your life. I'm also not sure I want to, because when somebody speaks a slur, there's only so many options. One of them is going, "Oh my god, I can't believe he just did that," and the other one is, "Oh man, now I gotta punch this dude for real." And I mean, I guess there's the irrational rage where you skip that first thought and just punch the dude, but I'd like to experience none of those today, so I think we're good. You're all right here.
Mhm.
Okay. The slur machine is off.
Why is there a machine for that?
Well, you know.
No, don't
Because
answer that.
I need to be able to turn it on or off at a moment's notice.
When you want to pump them out.
Exactly.
I'm gonna end this episode before I somehow get double demonetized. I'll see you guys next month. By you guys, I mean the viewers, not these guys. I never want to see these people again. Have you seen Never Again?
Exactly.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.